Hey everyone, happy October 21st. Hope you're doing well today. Yesterday, I touched on a topic that I mentioned it, spiritual arrogance. And I mentioned it in connection with those I am statements, not the God I am, not Jesus, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, those statements. But how you and I can learn to live like we're alive. And if we struggle with living like we're alive, these are I am statements that we can tell ourselves, I am loved, I am forgiven, I am living free, I am the righteousness of God, because he who was without sin became sin so that I might become the righteousness of God. And I mentioned that we are subject to, or vulnerable, not subject to, we're vulnerable to at some point become spiritually arrogant if we're not careful. So when we're saying those words, those I am statements, we want to be really, really careful not to put on the grave clothes of pride. We see this parable that Jesus tells of the story of two men. And I want us to look at this under that umbrella of holy arrogance. That we can fall prey to that. This world is all about me, I, mine. And being a Christ follower, Christ demonstrates how we are to live, and it is the exact opposite of my, I, and mine. I love the way that David Guzik says this regarding this verse, or addresses this topic. If I credit myself for supposed great and spiritual walk with God, then it is an easy thing to despise another for their supposed low and carnal walk with God. We have got to be very careful that we are not living so high and holy that we are walking with our nose down, looking down our nose, to those who are not quite yet where we are spiritually. That's to the believer that's not quite as far along in their journey as we are. And Paul addresses that a lot in his letters, his prison letters. But also to those who are not yet saved. We cannot be all high and mighty and holy and be drawing people to Christ. Humility and holiness hold hands. They don't compete with one another. And we have to be truly, truly careful. And this is demonstrated with this Pharisee and this tax collector, who tax collectors at that time were looked upon as just the worst of the worst. And they were just doing what they were hired to do and what they were told to do, and they were condemned. But I wanted to put together a few things that we can look at, kind of a measuring stick of what we can look at as a list of examining questions that we can ask ourselves, we can ask Holy Spirit to examine our lives, to diagnose whether or not we are spiritually arrogant. If we have this holy, high and holy opinion of ourselves. Do I talk to God about others' faults and transgressions? Are you sitting in church and you hear a message? You're hearing this message from the pastor on this particular topic, and you're thinking to yourself, I hope my spouse is listening. Or you look around and go, I don't see her here. But this certainly is a great message for her. He is not in his normal seat. I don't see him here. Can we agree we've probably all been guilty of that? But if we're talking to God more about someone else's sins and faults, we might have a problem with spiritual arrogance. If we're talking to others, uh-oh, here it comes, about the faults and transgressions of others, we might have a problem with holy arrogance and spiritual superiority. If I'm lifting myself up while tearing others down, I might have a problem with spiritual superiority. Do I spend time seeking ways to help others grow spiritually without condemning them for not being where I am spiritually? If I do this, if I'm helping people grow spiritually without condemnation to where they are or are not, then I don't have a problem with spiritual superiority and holy arrogance. I'm actually moving in the right direction. If I can help someone, and if someone says to me, I just admire your faith. How in the world do you keep your head on straight? How do you just say, by the grace of God? It doesn't have anything to do with me. It's all about God. It's all about His Word. I need it every day. I am a mess that He is making into a message. If that is how we handle spiritual compliments and flattery that someone gives to us, then we're headed in the right direction, and humility and holiness are holding hands. If we rely on our own righteousness to make us right with God and continually seek God for mercy and grace to cover our sin, then we're on the right path, and we are not struggling with, or we're not being overtaken by, I think we always struggle with it, but we're not being overcome by and taken over by holy arrogance. Constantly be thinking of ways, and let's see, what is it that C.S. Lewis says? Humility is not thinking less of our... Somebody's going to go look up that C.S. Lewis quote and put it in today's notes, right? It's thinking of ourselves. It's not thinking less than of ourselves. It's thinking of ourselves less. So in other words, humility is not making you feel like a doormat, but it's just thinking of yourself less. I believe I got it right. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking you're less than, but it's thinking less than yourself. Thinking of yourself less. That's it. I think I'm getting it right. Somebody look that up and put it on today's post. But we're constantly going to be, the enemy of this world's going to be walking around with that pride grave cloth to put back on us. Because pride is, it comes before our fall. And if Satan can get us, he knows he can't unsave us, but if he can make us proud about it, he will, because he knows pride comes before the fall, and he doesn't want anything more than to see us fall and fail, so he can just step on us and go, see, yeah, I told you so. So this is something that we really need to pay close attention to in our walk with the Lord. Holy arrogance and spiritual superiority. Am I guilty of it? Am I being overtaken by it? Or are humility and holiness holding hands in my life? We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.